does like your wife dress you, or do you, because you always look good, Dr. Scott Johnson. You always put together, you know?
Yeah, I try to be.
Well, I'm impressed. Well, you do so much speaking now.
Yeah.
You're like almost like famous. I should just get your autograph.
Infamous, maybe.
Infamous.
Not quite
okay.
famous.
Well, I think it's just great. We are super excited to have you come back. So thank you for taking the time.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Well, you've got kids, and like I don't even know, do they still know how to spell D-A-D?
Yeah.
Is it natural still? Okay, good.
Yeah.
I know with how much you give to all of us, it's just been wonderful. Well, tonight we really want to focus on essential oil therapy, and you've written some, out of the park books here recently on replacing medication with essential oils, or how they actually go down the same pathways inside the body as some of the medicines. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that essential oils, constituents of some of these essential oils, are actually used as the medicine. Pharma is plants. We've been using plants for thousands of years to heal, and they're the basis of a lot of medicine. So can you shed some light on the essential oils that I have a lot of questions here, like 2 pages this time, okay? So so what are your, you've done a lot of research, so what are your thoughts that when someone says, can essential oil replace a medicine, even though we can never replace a pharmaceutical, that's not our job, but have there been instances, and how do you feel about that?
That's an exciting prospect, isn't it?
I think so.
That is a great question, and that's frequently asked. And my answer is that the research is now supporting that there are many essential oils that can work on the same pathways or in the same mechanisms of action as certain pharmaceuticals. And you talked about that plants really are the basis of many, many of the medicines that we have. They're just hijacked molecules from nature, right?
Yeah, hijacked. That's a good way to say it.
So we know now that they can work on the same pathways, and in fact there have been some head-to-head comparisons with essential oils and certain drugs that have been very positive for essential oils. Remarkable results can be obtained when you use an evidence-based approach and you look at what science tells us, and science has revealed about essential oils, showing that they have anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, antioxidant, antiseptic properties, and much, much more. So when we can learn how to use those and employ them for our bodies and our minds and our emotions, they can dramatically influence health. And I'll tell you one thing that essential oils do that drugs will never be able to do is they will simultaneously work on the mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual aspects of your well-being. So when they're working on all aspects at once, that's what makes them such a dramatic tool in your overall well-being.
Why are we so in love with smell? That little bulb that's up there, in the brain. Why do we just have such passion? And the thing is, I have found, and I teach, that we make emotions when we smell something. So now every time we smell cinnamon, we think of grandma, or we smell a peppermint, or we have these emotions that are so related to smell. And so just using essential oils that way can help our emotional state of mind. What is it in the oil that makes that happen?
You're exactly right. They're called scent memories.
Scent memories.
Yeah, and the
New
reason
word.
it works so well is because essential
On the green
oils
screen, new word.
have access to our sense of smell, right? Where our sense of smell is the one sense that has direct access to the brain. And
Yeah,
so
of course,
everything else,
right
so
there.
if I'm going to pinch myself here, well, the peripheral nerves here have to send a message back to the central nervous system, which gets to the brain, which sends another service saying, hey, something's happening down here. That's not necessarily true. When you inhale something, those odor molecules actually hit those nasal passages, and then they get to the olfactory bulb, which gets right into the amygdala and the limbic system of the brain, and it can dramatically affect your body based on that direct access to the brain. Some remarkable things have happened in recent science showing that the sense of smell is maybe way more important than we ever gave it credit, because we don't just have scent receptors in the nose. Scent receptors are actually all over the body, they found now.
Really?
So we have scent receptors all throughout the body. And some other interesting things that they found is that females actually tend to have higher scent receptor amounts than males do. So the females are going to be able to distinguish scents better, and they use that in selecting a mate. Isn't that interesting?
Well, I did date this guy in college, and I remember dating him, and I just couldn't wait I could smell him like from a mile away. I was like, ooh, scent receptor sites all over, honey. He was like, woo, he's here in the room somewhere.
The interesting thing is they're saying that the females are attracted to men who have an opposite immune system as they do. And so that their offspring will have immunity from both sides and have a better immune system than they do. So it's so interesting that that science is now revealing really just how important the sense of smell is, and we just don't give it enough credit.
When I was writing one of the videos that's available as a DVD and a CD is how to raise the frequency of everyone around you without them knowing. And it's a presentation I do on raising the frequency, right, of your environment. And so I taught to my children, and I was like, why? Because people love our home, we love our home and our offices and whatnot, and people always comment on the smell, no matter where we are. And I asked my children, what are your favorite things about living in the home that you find? And every one of them was like, the aromatherapy. It just has this calming effect. And, we all know if mom forgot to fill the diffuser, because I was like, okay, what's wrong, And it's just been really powerful. So fun to know that there's scent receptors over the whole body. That is really cool.
Yeah, it's something you can do. You talk about that, mom forgot to fill the diffuser. Well, sometimes you need to do what I call stealth diffusing. So when you know somebody needs some correction in their attitude or something like that, you put that oil in and you diffuse it just around them, and you got to take care of it. Right?
Stealth diffusing, I love it. Now, if you're one of Scott's kids, you now know what he's doing, okay? Yeah. Or wife. Oop. So let's just talk about some of these issues. So one of the number one issues that we deal with in our clinics before we, as you know, we've closed all of our clinics and wellness centers because all we want to do is educate, which is why we started this program, is digestive issues. And I know enzymes are huge. We do a lot with enzymes to help with digestive issues. But my gosh, everything from IBS to Crohn's, colitis, even gluten intolerant, that's a digestive issue. Depression, which we'll talk about later, it comes down to digestion. What do you recommend? What have you found for that gut-brain connection and for digestion? What do you find?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that we're finding more and more as more research comes out how important that the gut is in digestion for overall health, that it has an influence in almost every illness and disease that you will experience. But one of the things that I see frequently is that people today, we live high-stress lives, we don't eat very good food, and so we tend to have a higher ulcer ratio than others, than our ancestors, maybe even mom and dad had. And one of the things that scientists have associated with ulcers is higher quantities of the H. pylori bacteria.
Yeah, that's huge.
And that is something that essential oils actually have some pretty good inhibitors. So we have found through research, for example, that myrtle essential oil has the ability to inhibit the H. pylori bacterium, and so that could potentially offer or protection for the stomach because it's getting rid of that bacteria that might be eating away at our stomach lining. An interesting study too is when they did an animal study where they pitted cardamom essential oil directly against Zantac. Everybody's heard of Zantac, right? Well, what the interesting study found was that the cardamom essential oil actually protected the stomach better than Zantac did.
Wow.
And so now we know that we can have cardamom that will significantly protect that stomach. Another thing that we find is limonene. Limonene is something that's a compound that's abundant in citrus essential oils. Like orange and lemon are particularly high in limonene. It's been shown that it will help relieve heartburn. And so we don't necessarily need to go and get the antacids that have some less than desirable things that you're also taking in, and they destroy your stomach acidity so you don't digest your
I'm
food
very
well.
anti-acid, don't worry. I'm very anti-acid.
Instead, we can use an orange or a lemon oil that's really high in limonene. One other thing that I've found in my research is if we want to support a normal and a healthy stomach lining, marjoram essential oil actually has been shown to encourage a normal stomach mucosal lining, and that's really important because that's really the barrier to keep things from destroying our stomach and the sensitive tissues in the stomach.
Excellent. That's what. So, and as far as in the small intestine, do essential oils make it to the small intestine?
Yes.
How? And I mean, we're looking at millions of microvilli, 26,000 in the first quarter inch, right? So we're looking at a lot of activity going on in the small intestine. How soon are those oils absorbed into the microvilli and thrown to the liver and then assimilable? How fast does this happen?
Well, it depends on the mode of application. It's interesting though that you can find, for example, when you apply lavender topically, it's within about 15 to 20 minutes that they can detect those compounds in lavender within the blood. And so that's telling me that it's getting through that skin barrier really quickly and starting to disperse throughout the system and the bloodstream so that it's all over throughout if you're able to pull those from the bloodstream. There's not really as many studies that are showing that orally, how quickly they get into the bloodstream, but I can just tell you from personal experience that it's pretty quick once it hits that stomach and the capsule starts to dissolve and it gets things into the small intestine that you're experiencing the benefits and the results of that essential oil very rapidly.
Would you ever recommend putting a carrier oil in the capsule with the essential oils, or is that not necessary?
It's not absolutely necessary. You can do so. For example, if you were to add maybe some coconut oil that has some medium chain triglycerides, it might actually improve the absorption of the essential oils.
That would be my recommendation, but I'm such a carrier oil fanatic. I love carrier oils. Okay, and what about pulling? Like I do mouth pulling. I'll throw my coconut oil in my mouth and Google around there for 5 minutes and spit it out. Can I put essential oils just topically in that as well? Would that be beneficial? Would it not?
Sure.
Would it interact with the already pulling toxins out of the body, or what would you recommend?
It may actually pull them better, but the interesting thing is it'd probably support your oral health as well too, because that's something that we know, like lemon essential oil, for example, if you were to put in that, it actually combats the bacteria Strep mutans, which is one of the most common associated bacteria to cause cavities.
Like, do you dream about bacteria when you go to bed? Like all these
Yeah, it
scary
haunts me.
words, and I'm like, I'd hate to be in his bed and him wake up with this terror,
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. So then, what is there just because we're on the topic of my mouth and other people's mouths, so raw food doesn't always make them white and clean, and we don't do a whole lot of, and we would never use a particular white product. So are there any essential oils that would help whiten teeth that we could add into coconut oil when we're pulling?
Orange oil is frequently done.
Are we all writing this down? Aren't you all excited to go home and do coconut pulling with orange oil? Okay.
So orange oil, because it's high in that limonene, which we've already talked about, but it's known as a whitening agent, and so there are people who are reporting significant whitening of their teeth by adding, some orange to their pulling, or they're putting it on their toothpaste or something like that.
That's so fun. So we used to sell in our grocery stores essential oil toothpastes, and they had coconut oil in them. Are they easy to make? I never asked how they were made. One of the local ladies, professionals, made them. Have you made them, or do you recommend them?
Yeah, actually I have a book called Synergy. It's an essential oil thing, and I have two recipes for toothpaste. One that's just a powder, and one that's the squeezable gel type that people are used to.
Awesome.
But when I use that, I found that my teeth feel cleaner than any other toothpaste that I use. So I really like it, and it's a nice flavor. You have a little bit of minty flavor because I typically put peppermint in mine, and I put some lemon because I know that benefit of lemon, and you could add some orange because that will help whiten the teeth at the same time. So you really could. It's fun to make your own products if you have the time and the energy to do so. It's fun to make some.
It doesn't take that much time. I have this whole feeling and saying, love their guts. We should love our kids' guts enough. Right, love their guts to cut up their oranges, right? Because every kid likes their vegetables and fruits cut up a little more. So now it can be like love their teeth,
Right.
Love their teeth long enough to take 5 minutes to make a toothpaste. So I think it's just great. And again, it's so cool you've given us recipes for that.
Don't forget your mouthwash, your essential oil mouthwash too. So.
There we go. Is that recipe in your book?
It is.
Okay.
There's one for that as well.
That's awesome. I actually threw a bunch of recipes in my recipe book on essential oils because to make a lot of these different cleaning products and products at home, I didn't put the toothpastes in there. But it's people are always amazed that they can use essential oil to do their cleaning, to clean their bathrooms, to clean their, and you feel much better about it, and it's very sanitizing. When I travel, I take all my essential oils with me, and I sanitize the hotel, and I mean, not the whole hotel, but like my room in the hotel, because I don't really trust everything that went on in my room before I got there. Anyhow, so it's pretty cool. So thank you so much for doing that. You were talking about blending essential oils, and we didn't cover this in the last episode, and I don't have it written down for this episode, so we're just going to do a tangent.
Okay.
Are there essential oils you just shouldn't match? Remember, I'm the one who was raised and taught essential oils as aromatherapist, never, low, medium, and high tones. Mix. Don't mix these oils because they'll counteract. What do you find with essential oils?
My experience has been that you really can't counteract the essential oils. Now, you can have a balancing effect, but that's in general. Natural products are very balancing within the body, and so I don't worry so much about base notes versus middle notes versus top notes, and having these very just ratios that really, you have to have 30% of this one and 30 of this one, and I don't worry about that so much as I worry about what is the therapeutic value of that essential oil that I'm putting in that blend. Am I going to have the best benefits by putting these two oils together? Am I going to have a synergistic effect? And research shows us that you do. When you look at, for example, the antimicrobial properties of lavender and tea tree alone, they both have antimicrobial properties. Well, you would think that when you would add them together, they may just have whatever is the highest antimicrobial property of the two oils. It's not necessarily the case. They actually have a significantly increased antimicrobial property when you put those two oils together. And so in this case, when we talk about synergy, instead of 1 + 1 = 2, it may equal 4, 5, or even 7, just depending on what combination you're putting together.
So lethal dose, you're probably familiar with lethal dose in the medical world. So lethal dose, we can have a product that has lethal dose of 1, meaning 1 out of 100 rats have died from taking it, and another lethal dose of two rats died out of 100. But you can combine those two products, those two metals, and you'll have a 100 LD rating.
Right.
Is there anything lethal dose-wise with oils we should be concerned with, or combining things that would be dangerous?
Anything with a high ketone content or something that is known to be toxic in high quantities. For example, a wintergreen essential oil. We know
I'm wearing it again.
At certain concentrations that can be lethal. Children, 2.5 milliliters tends to be when they can get a toxicity response to it. 4 milliliters could potentially kill a child. And so if you were to take a wintergreen and then maybe add a birch, which is very similar to wintergreen, you may have an additive effect that can amplify those benefits, or not those benefits, but that adverse effect. So I'm always cautious with oils with constituents that like methyl salicylate or thujones, or maybe it's a 1,8 cineol content or something like that. You have to just be smart and reasonable. I
just have to tell people who've not seen your first episode that you used to work on cars. And now you spit all these words out like you remember all of them all the time, right? You can just recite. You have a whole new vocabulary, don't you?
Yeah, I'm a reformed auto person.
Reformed auto person. But it's amazing to hear you say all these words knowing your past. And I think it's just amazing that you've been able to, number one, retain all of it. So what essential oils do you take to retain this kind of information? Yeah. What do you do?
Realistically, it starts with nutrition and activity. If you want to have good brain health, you got to be eating right and you got to be active. But I do tend to gravitate towards those oils that I know are something that will increase your concentration or your speed or accuracy of calculations and things like that. So like a peppermint or a rosemary essential oil or a wintergreen. I like to diffuse those. They're pleasant scents. But in addition, there's some research showing that they can benefit the brain and help cognitive abilities and help us with memory retention and things like that.
So I like the whole less hair look that you got going on, okay? So, but is that only so you can like rub in coconut oil with rosemary and stuff? Does it stimulate anymore? I mean, really, I'm asking, can you actually get essential oils? Should you even ever put them near the base of your skull or on your head?
It's just because I didn't like getting my hair wet.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay, just had to check. You're so funny.
But Yeah, it's actually a good thing to do that. There are oils that I recommend putting, right here at the base of your skull or the crown of your head.
I've heard that.
Or, across your forehead. I even like when you're having a headache or something like that, right behind the ears here is a great place to apply it. And that tends to work very well.
That's awesome. How cool. Okay, so we're going to go on. I have a couple questions here. Well, actually, you can see I have more than a couple. When Jenna puts the 10 minutes up, then I'll know I got to even talk faster. So we're looking at, I mentioned earlier, depressants, antidepressants, and we find with antidepressants, I've got a whole 2-hour video presentation on antidepressing. No, it's called, what is it called again? It's a fun approach to depression. So but essential oils, I definitely mentioned essential oils through that presentation because my gosh, they can change someone's outlook immediately. So can you talk about what your clinical studies have shown with antidepressants? And we have a large percentage of children now on antidepressants as young as 5 years old that are on these medications. This is, if you're not aware of what's going on, so.
Yeah, because we have that direct connection to the amygdala and the limbic system, which really is intimately involved in our emotional response, then we have the ability to significantly influence our mood state based on the essential oils that we inhale and are exposed to. One of the most remarkable studies that I saw was an Iranian study where they actually took people with depressive disorder and they segregated them into 3 different groups, and they gave one the typical medication of Prozac. They gave them the Prozac. Another group, they took a 2% dilution of essential oil, orange essential oil. So you're talking 2 drops of the orange essential oil and about a teaspoon of carrier oil. Wow. And then they took 10 drops of that dilution of orange and they put it on the body of the people, 10 drops 3 times a day. Okay, the third group also received orange essential oil in the same dilution, but they decided to give them 20 drops 3 times a day. The interesting thing in that study was that the group that had the biggest decrease in their depressive symptoms was not the 20-drop group. It was the 10-drop group, which even beat out Prozac in a head-to-head clinical study. So that orange oil worked better than Prozac to relieve depressive symptoms. And that teaches us that more is not always better, that we have to use the appropriate dose, and that very little is often required to get a great result.
And the side effects, there aren't any.
Right.
Using essential oil, those 10 drops of an orange, where you're looking at Prozac, and we always look at the thyroid becoming an issue because we had all that fluoride in their medication, and now we have a thyroid that's not absorbing. So, there's a lot of issues that can happen from medications that don't happen. Do you find a lot of side effects with essential oils? What do you find?
It's not, if you use them reasonably and responsibly, you're not likely to get an adverse reaction. You're going to get positive results. The side effects are positive things like you're in elevated mood or you're going to have more ability to cope with stress and things like that. So can you have adverse reactions? Yes, because it's just reasonable and logical that anything that can cause a positive benefit can also cause a negative reaction. What determines that is the amount that we're using. If you're going to drink an entire 15 milliliter bottle of essential oil, you're likely going to have an adverse reaction. So we want to just use reasonable doses and reasonable amounts, and we will have remarkably great benefits with relatively few side effects, if any.
So pain medications, over-the-counter drugs, we're seeing some, like the warnings, hello, go ahead and hit the snooze button because you'll get back to your movie in a few minutes right after the warnings on a lot of these medications. But the practice, people are taking, a lot of pain medication and having adverse effects from it. What have you been finding on that?
Yeah, that's something that's huge, and especially since the recent release of the information saying that even short-term use now of over-the-counter pain medications and prescription non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs can increase your risk of heart attack and stroke. So that's something that's definitely on people's mind, and they're looking for alternatives. But the great thing is, as we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of anti-inflammatory and analgesic or pain-relieving properties of essential oils. One of the things that non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs try to do is to target a specific enzyme in the body that causes inflammation called the COX-2 enzyme. Now that's only present during times of inflammation because of a disorder. And we know that lemongrass essential oil, for example, can inhibit that same COX-2 enzyme without all the garbage side effects that are going to come with a COX-2 inhibitor. The interesting thing is too, though, that other researchers looked at its analgesic effects or its pain relieving effects and found that the molecules within it were able to the constituents within lemongrass were able to inhibit all kinds of pro-inflammatory molecules and then also decrease pain both in the central and the peripheral nervous system. So what does that tell us? That it may be beneficial for nerve pain, which is huge because not many medications are even touching nerve pain. Copaiba is another, it's one of my favorite go-tos whenever there's some kind of inflammatory condition or some pain involved. The studies show us that it can also decrease central and peripheral nervous system pain.
And which one is that?
Copaiba.
I don't think many of us are familiar with that essential oil.
It's becoming more and more common. It was introduced fairly recently, but it's becoming more and more common, and it's something that you can use quite regularly. It has a whole bunch of benefits, but one of my favorite is for pain and inflammation because it targets a different enzyme called the 5-LOX enzyme. 5-LOX enzyme is one that's particularly associated with chronic inflammatory conditions and diseases, and so that's huge to be able to help that. Narcotics are a big problem too, where the addiction is huge, and we have significant increases of people who are using narcotics for pain. Interestingly, you can look at like Eucalyptus globulus is known to bind to the same opioid receptors so that it will decrease and block pain from the production of pain molecules so that you can have reduced pain in a similar manner, a similar mechanism of action as an opioid drug would.
Right, and that's something we had been putting together as a displacement or replacement theory, where there are certain oils that you can use, like black pepper is wonderful for stopping to smoke because it's going to have that same binding at the receptor site. So eucalyptus is going to do the same thing with some of the pain. So in our clinic, we would often make a rub for neuropathy, and we would add these different essential oils and some herbs to it in a coconut base and rub that on, and we had great results with neuropathy, which is a big problem. So your essential oils that you'd kind of recommend is this new one I can't pronounce, and then lemongrass, right? Are those some of the ones you recommend? Can we use them together? Ketones are cool. Are we good?
Put those two together, and I would add a couple other things. Like I love to add orange oil, and the reason is because the limonene in the orange oil is known to actually increase glutathione. Glutathione is really important for our nerve health and for the myelination of the nerve. And so whenever we're having nerve issues, that's great to support those nerves by keeping them myelinated and giving them the nourishment they need. Okay,
excellent. This is fun. Isn't this just fun? Yeah, blow your mind. All these things we can do. Just read his books, trust me. Then you won't sleep. That's right. Okay, we were talking about high blood pressure. So high blood pressure, stroke, obviously what we're eating is going to be in our bloodstream, and that's the number one thing to curtail is what we're putting into our bloodstream. But then number two, what can we do with essential oils for high blood pressure?
Well, that's the remarkable thing about how you can affect your blood pressure just from inhalation of essential oils. That's the thing that I really love is there's clinical studies showing that people who inhale certain essential oils like a lavender, and they're usually combining one or probably two or three of these, but a lavender, a ylang ylang, a bergamot essential oil, when they combine those together and people inhale those, they actually have been shown to reduce blood pressure in clinical trials.
How quickly?
It's within minutes, typically.
Really?
So it's a rapid decrease that these people are experiencing, and that's in people who are pre-hypertensive and people who are hypertensive and normal subjects. And so we can get a balancing of our blood pressure. Another thing that I found that's pretty remarkable is bergamot essential oil, not just inhaling, but when you use it topically or really get more into the bloodstream through oral use, then it actually can prevent calcium from entering cells. Well, by doing so, that can actually open and widen the blood vessels, which allows the blood to flow more freely, and then
keep
it
the calcium
reduces your
moving.
blood pressure and also reduces that vascular
Wouldn't
inflammation.
it reduce stones also?
It's possible that it could.
I guess it would.
Yeah, because bergamot has a little bit of limonene, which is actually, and limonene keeps coming up. It's one of my favorite constituents in essential oils, but it's one that has been shown to help dissolve gallstones. So.
Wow. Oh, this is fun. Okay. So we have, sleep, my biggest thing. So I'm at this brain class the other night. I went because I was so excited to learn more about the brain. And the big thing we talked about at the end, and I actually helped talk about this part quite a bit, was on sleep. That's such a big problem. And I know there's so many things that affect the sleep of a person, from electromagnetic frequencies to what they're eating to their overstimulation after sunset when the pineal gland is trying to put you to bed with melatonin, and we all like, put the lights on, let's have a party. No, go to bed, right? So we're already overstimulated. We keep ourselves out of circadian rhythm. Can an essential oil help with this too?
It can, and it's important. I'm glad you talked about the pineal gland, because that's something that's huge.
I love
we
the
have
pineal
these
gland.
bright screens that are blue in front of us on our phones, our tablets, our television, and they actually send that light signal back to the pineal gland, and then we get this signal, we need to be awake because of this bright blue light that's being sent back. So I'm glad you mentioned that. But the essential oils can definitely help. There are several that help. For example, lavender essential oil. Lavender is one that has been used in clinical trials, and one particular is people in the ICU. Now, you're not going to get a lot of sleep in an ICU because there's monitors. You have a nurse coming in to either poke you or check your vitals every half hour, and so it's hard to sleep when you're in an ICU. But interestingly, they allowed ICU patients to inhale lavender essential oil, and what they found was that they were able to sleep longer and have better quality sleep just by inhaling that lavender essential oil in the ICU. The other thing you can look at is how do essential oils influence our neurotransmitter of GABA. Okay, so that's our calming neurotransmitter in the brain and will help us sleep. We know that vetiver, that's one that can actually enhance the activity of GABA, and so we can get more calm and relaxation, and it can help calm the brain and help us sleep. Another one is valerian, if you can withstand
for most people.
Yeah, valerian essential oil. If you can stand the smelly sock feet smell that it has, it actually inhibits the enzyme that breaks down GABA. And so that allows more GABA to stay within the brain and be available to the brain and helps us relax and promotes that restful sleep.
We have a neurotransmitter test. We've worked with some of the top people in neurotransmitter research, including brain surgeons, and we have this neurotransmitter test that you're available to take online. You at home can take this online as well. There's a part A and a part B. After going through part B, and you get your results of what your dopamine, serotonin, your GABA, acetylcholine levels are, you can actually take a link over to find out, okay, this would be your kryptonite. If you're acetylcholine, if you don't touch an almond, right, et cetera, et cetera. Interesting. I'm going to make sure these essential oils are on there. So I'm going to hit you up after class and let's make sure we get that added, because that would be really fascinating to also be able to use things we already have at home to help with that. Right. Will you do that for us?
Sure.
That'd be super awesome. You'll like my brain surgeon friends.
Yeah.
They're very wonderful. Okay, so joints, that's not a word. Okay, joints and bones. So joints and bones, another big issue. Man, people with their knees and people with their elbows, and oh my gosh, there's a lot of pain going on. And what do you find with essential oils?
Yeah, it's important that we support the cells that make up the cartilage, because we have to have healthy cells in the cartilage in order for to have healthy joints and joints that move freely and don't have a lot of pain and discomfort. Well, we know that alpha-pinene, which is a super, super common compound found in essential oils, but it's particularly high in frankincense. That is known to help preserve the chondrocytes, which are the healthy cells that make up cartilage. And so if we're going to support their cell health and make them have longer, healthier lives, then that's going to help us have healthier cartilage and therefore healthy joints. The other thing that's... So topically, on whatever's aching internally, we can be using frankincense? Sure, frankincense is one you can do that. The particular species they used in that study was the Freriana. So you're going to find typically 3 frankincense species are the most commonly available on the essential oil market. You'll find Boswellia freriana, Boswellia carteri, and Boswellia sacra. But Boswellia freriana is the one that has that study drew the alpha-pinene from and found that benefit. So Another thing when you're talking about bone health in general is we want to have normal bone remodeling. People think about their bones as they're just static things that are in their body and they don't change, and they're, once you're an adult, that's just the way your bones are going to be. But in reality, there's a complex process continually going on within the body, and we're releasing minerals and old bone from the surface and then laying down new. And I like to tell people this is just like your road crews. They come in and they take out the old asphalt, and another crew comes behind and lays down new asphalt so that it's fresh and it's going to be durable. Same thing's happening with our bones all the time. And we have one cell that's leading the way and taking out old bone and mineral, and one that's following behind and putting new bone matrix down. And if we have that crew in the front going faster than the crew in the back, then we get those brittle, weak bones. What we have found in research is that there are a few essential oils that can actually normalize that ratio so that we have normal bone remodeling. We're going to have the crew that's in front going the same pace as the one in the back. And so we're going to have good, healthy, strong bones without holes. Well, a few that do that are thyme essential oil, pine essential oil, and rosemary essential oil. Those three have been shown to help normalize that bone remodeling process.
Can we also just take them as spices? Can we be using thyme, and can we be using rosemary more often and taking the essential oils? Is it counteractive?
I think you could, but you have to remember that the herb is going to be different than the essential oil. They'll have different chemicals, different constituents, and so we may not get the same process. And I would say probably take those oils and apply them to your long bones on your body and use them topically.
That's fascinating. That's awesome. Okay. Oh, that's right. So at the cell level, obviously everything is cells. And so we have receptor sites, we have things that clog receptor sites. There's been studies showing essential oils that you can put in your body, and it literally separates cells apart very quickly, or removes some of the buildup from cell receptor sites. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the belief is that compounds like phenylpropanoids, that they are known to remove debris and things like heavy metals or xenoestrogens and things like that from your cell receptor sites. And if we can have clean cell receptor sites, we're going to have better communication,
amazing cell health.
Better function,
okay,
right?
Good.
Amazing cell health.
That's right.
So that's definitely something that essential oils, I think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg on that to find out what's going on and what they might be able to do. We need to research that more in depth, but I'm confident we're going to find some positive benefits.
Did I just add on to your already heavy schedule? Sorry to your sweet wife, because now I'm going to send you into the corner of your house again to find out how to clean receptor sites. That's awesome. Okie dokie. I have used many applications techniques for essential oils. My children have been trained on different applications because I want it, and so they do it to me, and then we do it to them. I do it to my husband. So we have different applications up the spine and through the muscles of the body. You have a new technique, don't you?
I do.
I want you to share that with everybody so we can all go home and learn it, and I want to learn how to do it so I can teach it during my tips and tools presentations, and we can show some video on this.
Yeah, it's called the waterfall technique, and it's been hundreds and hundreds of hours of research and collaborating with a lot of different professionals, medical professionals, massage therapists, research scientists, to really perfect and get this fine-tuned to where we can have people get a dramatic experience when they experience the waterfall technique. The waterfall technique is basically a special application of a series of essential oils to the spine and to the feet. And each of them serve a purpose. I know there are other applications out there that apply to the same area. Outside of the application site and that we're using essential oils, really there's nothing the same between these, because this is completely applied science to it. And everything that we do, from the way that we apply them to the oils that we're applying, has a specific purpose to either reduce limiting factors in wellness, like our stress response, to put the body in a more relaxed state so that it can carry out normal healing processes, to stimulate key body systems like the the endocrine system, the nervous system, the immune system, the musculoskeletal system, to support proper anatomical position of our spine. And so everything serves a very specific purpose, and I've had remarkable results from people. I've had people reporting after receiving it that they, one of the most common things I hear is people feel euphoric after it. And largely because a lot of the essential oils that we're using are made to stimulate the release of dopamine from the brain. And so you're getting this flood of endorphins and dopamine, and you're just feeling really good. People say they can better cope with stress after it. I constantly get people telling me they have the best night's sleep they've had in months after they've had it, and so they're able to sleep better that night. I've had people tell me, even as far as that it's been able to help better regulate their menstrual flow. And then other people telling me that it just is helping to reduce aches and discomfort that they're experiencing.
Is that found in a book, or is it, how do we get that information?
In my certification program, there's about 40 pages on the why behind everything, because that's what, I don't like to just tell people do this, I like to tell you why to do it. And so the why behind everything, and then if you want to be certified in it, we do live classes where people actually come and get to watch me perform it, and then they will receive it, give it, and help give it. And so by the time they are done with that class, they've seen it 4 times, and hopefully they'll be able to retain that information and then go home and use it for their loved ones.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. Okay, and so a couple things I wanted to talk about that, if we can squeeze that in. My children know I talk about 2 things every single day, and most of my staff does too, and it's bowel movements and sex, because that's what most people have a problem with because it doesn't function. And so bowel movements, I want to touch on that with essential oils. And then we had classes in one of our clinics. They were actually called the Passion Class, because we had this beautiful music. People had a full 7-course meal. We had violins and music, and then we talked about sex. We talked about herbs and essential oils, and we talked about physical attributes of making love, because not only do we have a society which is like, I've met with people who haven't made love to their spouses more than a few times a year, which just gets me sick. And then there are those who just can't get pregnant. They just absolutely cannot get pregnant at all. And so I have an entire section in my book about fertility and virility, but there's just so much we can cover on this subject, and I'd like you to bring in some thoughts on essential oil, on not only making love and having it help you get to that euphoric space where you can just let go of the 4 million things that are running through your subconscious and conscious that you have to do, and then also what you do to help. What do essential oils, what have we found when it comes to conceiving?
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people are concerned about. As we age, we tend to have our libido decrease, and so that's something.
I don't believe that, but anyhow.
that's just what people experience. But essential oils can actually remove maybe some of the roadblocks that are getting in the way of that, and maybe making people feel like their libido has decreased. It's common for people to diffuse things like a patchouli essential oil or a ylang ylang essential oil to help them just have better, be more in the mood, really, to have a stronger libido or to be more open to having sex with their partner. And so that's one thing that they can definitely look at. But in particular, conceiving is something that's one of the most touching messages that I ever receive, is when somebody has sent me a message, and this has happened multiple times, that they've been able to use the protocol that's in my books to help them conceive. And that can be such a challenge, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, when you want to have a family and you're unable to conceive. And one particular story that was sent to me was a lady that had been trying to conceive with her husband for 2 years. And during the process of that 2 years, she had 1 miscarriage and was really struggling. And she decided, what can she lose? Try the protocol in my book. And so she used the protocol in my book to help encourage normal fertility and conception. And within 60 days, in fact, she said it was under 60 days of using the protocol, She was able to conceive, and then the important thing was she was able to carry that baby to full term, and that baby is now probably about 10 months old. And she, just the joy of her life. I get to see some baby pictures because they were really appreciative of me putting together that protocol so that they could have that baby in their lives. And so it's just a very cute, lovable, adorable baby. So those are some of the most touching messages I get, is when people say that they've been able to have their family because of the essential oils.
And we've experienced that too. We've experienced that using oils and a lot of herbs, and it's been amazing to watch these women heal. Something interesting that I found in my research was actually men are just as prone to not being able to conceive as a woman now. It used to be thought it was only the women. And I actually I was speaking down in one of the cities here in southern Utah to a large group, and one of them was a doctor, and he had gotten my book in the mail. His wife had ordered it, and he opened it and he read it and wouldn't give it to her. But he said, of course, I think I know what chapter he turned to first, because in the virility section we talk about nettle, and we talk about the sex binding globulins, and so this testosterone can literally be suspended and not even be active or usable. By taking nettle, tincture and whatnot, he was able to release that and lose 40 pounds, and wonderful things have happened. At the essential oil level, is that as well what they're doing? Are we able to release testosterone? Is there a hormonal balance with this as well that we're experiencing, or is that something that we're just getting into research as well on?
Well, I think, yes, there's definitely...
People want to know that. I mean, it's a big issue.
Yeah, you have to remember, because we are directly connected to the limbic system, who is also going to influence our endocrine system, which will downstream affect hormones.
Gotcha.
We can definitely affect hormones. For example, we know that clary sage can help increase estradiol levels in females. Things like vetiver can increase testosterone levels in men. And so these are balancing effects, because they are very balancing in nature. Natural products really have things figured out. And nature knew what it was doing when things were put together. And it is very balancing, where they can go in and either mimic and stimulate, or it can block the action, whatever the body needs. And so, yes, we definitely can influence hormones, because we are influencing that endocrine system, which is responsible for our hormone production.
So let's talk about mimicking for a few moments, because my favorite essential oil obviously is wintergreen, and there's a very popular product that most people have in their house that is just a mimic of wintergreen. So can you please expand on just a little bit about what synthetics are, how they can copy that chemical makeup of an essential oil and then market it? Where do we find that with essential oils?
Yeah, it's common for scientists to want to find a drug that they can patent, and then they can make billions of dollars off of. And one of the things that they've done is they take the methyl salicylate from wintergreen and they put it in Bengay. And then Bengay is used topically as a muscle rub, right, to get rid of joint aches and muscle pain and things like that. So they've isolated what they consider the active constituent within the essential oil, which is the methyl salicylate. Now, that is probably the active constituent, but interestingly, research doesn't always show that the dominant compound is the active constituent that causes the therapeutic benefits. There's been multiple studies where they've tried to do the same thing, where they test an oil for a particular therapeutic value, and then they try and test its major individual components individually to see if they can find out, does one do this, and then we can hijack that, right, and make a drug out of it. Well, often they find that there's a synergistic effect between the minor constituents that are in the essential oil and the major as well. And so you can't just isolate that one nutrient or that one molecule. You've got to have all of the constituents working together generally to get that best effect, because when we isolate, like methyl salicylate, for example, then we are going to have an increased risk of an adverse reaction because it's no longer balanced as nature intended. It doesn't have those minor constituents in there that are balancing.
The whole food effect, the whole plant effect.
Fennel essential oil is a great example of that, where it has some compounds in it that, like an estragol or a methyl-eugenol, which may, in very large quantities, it could potentially be carcinogenic. But what they have found is that the other constituents that are within it balance that out and temper that response, and so you don't have that same risk because we have all of the other constituents in there balancing and helping control and mitigate any adverse reactions.
Can I just throw something crazy at you that just
Okay.
came to my mind? Now, most people know that I'm highly spoken on cannabis. So I love the hemp plant. I love it. I love watching. We've worked with thousands of people who've reversed cancer using THC, CBD for countless things. Has an essential oil ever been made of the hemp plant? Is that something, the flower, the bud, the stem, is there anything, is there any research going into that right now? And I really don't know. No one, he does not know I'm asking this question. This is totally on the spot. Okay.
Yeah, it is. People are commonly asking if they do distill essential oil from cannabis, and yes, they do. There is cannabis oil. It does not tend to have the THC in it, so it wouldn't have the same hallucinogenic effects.
But THC at some level has to be in there because
Right.
it's the catalyst to make CBD even worth it.
Right. Well, what they have not done a lot of research yet, to my knowledge, of what the benefits of that oil are, though. They've
You
kind
mean
of
the essential oil? Because
Right,
we
the
sell it. We
essential
sell
oil.
oils, but they're
Yeah,
not an
cannabis
essential oil
essential
of it.
oil.
Yeah,
So
we're selling just the oils.
So the essential oil, they've looked at kind of its constituent makeup, some of its basic properties, but they really have not done a lot of research into its benefits to human health quite yet.
Amazingly, because when in 1930, 1940, when they had the ban and the prohibition, more than 80% of the Encyclopedia Pharmacopoeia had to be rewritten because it was so dependent on cannabis. That's incredible, you know? So it's an oil that's been used for so long, but I didn't know if they had made an essential oil
Yep,
of
they
it.
have.
And so that's something I just wanted to throw at you. Okie dokie. Dr. Scott Johnson, so you have children, you have a wife, you have family, you've had a practice. What are some of the essential oils, the top few that you think people really should have in a kit? And then a couple recommendations before we need to close.
Yeah, it's hard to pin that down. People will always say, well, what's your very favorite essential oil, or what's your top 5? And it's so hard to do that. Reality was, when I first wrote my book, Surviving When Modern Medicine Fails, I was hoping to keep it to about 20 essential oils that I thought were absolutely essential. By the end of the book, I had 42. So it was just so hard to say, oh, I need this one for this particular protocol because it's just so effective there. But I typically will say, and it may change from time to time because it depends on what I've been researching at the time, but I like to have your lavender. Lavender is a Swiss Army knife of essential oils, and it has so many benefits, and it's a super carrier, which means it's going to enhance the benefits of all the other essential oils that you're going to use. So you got to have a lavender in there. Peppermint, because of all of its benefits for digestion and for our muscles, and for respiratory health, those things, that would be another one that I'd want to say. Copaiba is going to be in there. Copaiba is so great for the benefits of the inflammation, helping support a normal inflammatory response and to relieve aches and discomfort. But in addition to that, it's a great respiratory oil. It's great for supporting normal digestion, and it's actually great for the skin. And so you have so many different things that you can use it for there. You got to get one of your citrus oils in, and so I typically do orange. The only reason I choose orange is it tends to be highest in limonene, and limonene is so important for so many different things, but that orange...
Have you named a child limonene?
No, not yet. So that orange oil I'd throw in there, and then you'd probably need something that's really good for the immune system. So I'd probably bring a tea tree in, just because tea tree is one of them that it's really good in supporting the immune system, but it's also mild enough that you can use it on a variety of populations of people, and so that would probably round out my top 5 that I would say these are the must-haves. If you're going to just choose 5, that's all your budget can do, go get those 5 essential oils.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you for turning your life around from mechanics to this through your own, healing crisis, so to speak, and for remembering all those big words in one conversation. That was just amazing. And they're all in your book. That's the whole thing. This is what you speak. This is what you do. You're living it, and you look phenomenal. Your wife looks phenomenal. Your kids are beautiful. So we appreciate you coming on tonight.
You bet. Thanks for inviting me.
Let's hear it. Awesome.